the presentation. I will admit, I did not share the slide deck in advance, but right after this, along with an article that we'll mention later on in the call, I'm going to attach them. I'm going to go back and attach them to the calendar invite as a way to reference it. So you'll be able to get the slide deck today, in addition to we'll be uploading it later today on the website. Okay, so it looks like it slowed down a little bit, so we'll go ahead and get started so that we have, as folks continue to sign in, so that we have time to get through all the material today. So I'll start off just with a big welcome. We know we've had a lot of calls lately, but just as a reminder, the all-team call is really an opportunity for us to sort of put the pieces together, have all the teams on the call to share or ask questions, and then we'll be reviewing some logistics as well. So quick agenda for today. We're going to just give a reminder about the time frame and deliverables, and the arc of development, sort of pulling all of what we've been doing together as a reminder of where we are on our journey. And so Brandon Bennett will be covering those two pieces, and then we're going to be doing some pulse checks about where teams are to date, and we're going to attempt to do some live polling, but I have a backup plan in case it doesn't work. And then we'll be finishing off the call with just some key details about our deliverables, or about our next deliverable, the driver diagram. So I see folks are already doing it. So if you haven't yet, we didn't call it out, go ahead and just make a note of who you are and with what agency you're with in the chat box, just for us to keep tabs on who is able to join us this morning. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brandon.
Thanks, Amy. Welcome, everybody. Amy, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep,
Great.
Works for me. All right.
Excellent. This morning, as Amy said, we wanted to first start off with a reminder on our time frame and deliverables. So, Amy, if you'll click forward, we're going to kind of see those again. And this is a slide that you'll be used to seeing from past calls, and just kind of give you a sense of where we are and what we've been doing for the last 2 months or so. So back at the learning session 1 on August 31st, we had an opportunity to explore together the tools of improvement that would be useful during this sort of first phase of understanding our systems, investigating our systems. And we set out some deliverables which were around defining our team members and roles, drafting an aim statement, sort of really understanding what the destination will be for our organizations, what we would like to accomplish on behalf of those we serve, and then working on our own and with our coaches to develop a process map, a visual depiction of all the steps of work. And we've seen some wonderful process maps, and had a couple of calls where we got to review some of that work that the teams have submitted. And then in the last week or so, we submitted data, many of us, on baseline measurement analysis, and just a first look into the data that we have available from our systems. And the intention there was not for judgment, but rather to understand something about our systems, what data it has, what that data says, and really to just get a sense of how things have been going historically, and perhaps to give a sense of where we might go in the future, both with regard to the changes we would like to make, and with regard to the measures that might be helpful for us going forward. And so we've got that, and then at the end of this week, we're looking forward to seeing, or sorry, the end of next week rather, looking forward to seeing version 1.0 of our driver diagrams. And so looking forward to that. And we'll do just a couple of minutes at the end of this call, reminder about that again, for those who may have missed our QI content calls last week, where we spoke in depth about them. And then ultimately, we'd like to get to a place before the before our learning session at the end of November, where we're starting to develop a family of measures that'll be useful for us as an organization and for all of us as a collaborative to understand when and where we're making progress towards our goals. So that's a bit of our timeline and deliverables. And as we set out in August, we felt like this was ambitious, but would be helpful. And so we'll be doing a sense check on where we are with all of that later on, as Amy mentioned. Before we do that, though, I wanted to give a brief overview again of our sort of roadmap to improved outcomes in Cincinnati. And you'll recognize this first version of the slide from Learning Session 1 just as a reminder. But where we started off, and if Amy, if you'll click once for me, we started off at that first learning session, just really getting exposure to some of the tools and getting a sense of what we can expect out of the collaborative, and sort of starting to get to a place of setting an aim. Just what is our focus going to be? And so we've sort of been relentless about communicating that aim from time to time, but trying to get that down. And then from there, we moved into this initial sort of phase where our intention has been to diagnose our systems and to discover where we can coordinate across our organizations and our various services, appreciating that certainly the families that we serve often require a multitude of supports in order to get to a place of true stability. And so that's something that we've been thinking about, and people have been already trying to create process maps and develop relationships within the collaborative, which is just a tremendous thing to witness and see. So, but that's the phase we're in now. And where we're going next is something that we'll call trial and discovery of solutions. And we're going to talk more about that in more detail in just a minute. And then from there, after about a year or so, where we've had an opportunity to try lots of ideas and figure out which ones work and for who they work and how they work, and we've started to refine the improvements that we're making, we'll start to make those available on a permanent basis. We'll transition our status quo from what it has been to what it's going to be, and we'll start to make those changes, permanent changes to how we do business. But only when we have a strong degree of belief that they work for us. And once we've done that, we'll codify what we've learned. We'll try to sit back as a collaborative and say, okay, what have we learned about doing this, and how can we make that information available to others who may want to spread and scale that work, both in Cincinnati and outside of it, but specifically, certainly in Cincinnati, because that is our focus there going forward to 2020. And then ultimately, that's where we're going to get to a place where we're able to achieve our aim for our region, and that's our intention. So moving forward one slide, just to emphasize, this is where we're currently at. Sorry, go back one. Where that bold place is. We're still in that first phase of diagnosing and understanding, understanding that it really does take a while to sort of take a deep breath and to pause and to reflect on how our systems are designed, and appreciating that the design of our system has a profound effect on the outcomes that we're able to achieve for the families that we serve. And so that's why we've decided to take this 3-month sort of breath take and develop some ways forward. All right, so towards that end, we introduced a few tools. So if we click forward now, and the first one that we really talked about isn't really a tool, but more our philosophy, how improvement science works. We know that in order to improve effectively, that we would need to leverage our subject matter expertise. We would need to also leverage a few other things. We would need some data for our journey. We're going to need to know when we're on track and when we're getting off track, when things are getting better, when they're staying the same. We're going to need to know something about people. We need to know what motivates people, what's going to be an acceptable change, both in the workplace, because we all work with folks and we're going to be asking them perhaps to work in different ways or to use new and different tools, but also with our families that we work with. And we may be doing things that are new and that maybe they have not experienced before. And so it's really important to understand how to bring change to people in a way that is exciting, is acceptable, is desirable for them, and where they can see the benefit of that change coming. And we also talked about the importance of appreciating the system, that we want to be able to see how our systems function, how they're designed, how parts of our system interact, appreciating that systems are complex, dynamic things, and that they develop a life of their own once they're up and running. And that lastly, we needed a theory of knowledge. We needed to apply scientific thinking and the scientific method to our work in order to figure out ways forward. And appreciating that that scientific thinking is really about sort of trial and error. It's about saying, okay, let me have a hypothesis, let me try something in practice. If it works, fantastic. Let me continue to do that and continue to let that work. But when it doesn't work, for me to sort of to pause and say, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What could I learn from that experience? What might I do different next time? And so having that, what I would think of as sort of an inquiry stance towards our work, be present in that. So that was our way of thinking. And we introduced that at the first learning session as being a real critical piece. And then moving forward, we introduced some tools. And I apologize here that at least on my screen, some of the tools are cut off here on one side. But the first thing here that we had was the aim statement. And the aim statement, as we said, is the direction setter. It's the thing that really helps get us focused and helps us to know where to draw the boundaries around our work, our improvement work. So in particular, we're looking at one particular style of intervention or one particular process that we're working on. And so towards that end, we introduced also the process mapping tool. And that tool was there to help us understand the design of the system. So the aim statement was about getting the boundaries, getting the aim, getting the destination. All of that's part of the theory of knowledge. The process map's about understanding the system, getting the sense of what the day-to-day work is, what the steps are, who does them, where they occur, and really starting to put a lot of detail into our understanding of our systems. And then the baseline data analysis comes along in the form of taking a look into data that is existing and available to us. And we learn something about where in the system things work, for whom they work, and maybe where they don't, maybe where they take a long time, or where we're not getting the outcomes that we want for the families that we serve. And through all of this, we start to develop some ideas. And so the next slide here that we click to, we'll see a driver diagram. And how I see it is all of the work that we've been doing during this first phase of understanding and diagnosis is, of course, when we wrote the aim, if we click once, we developed the focus for our driver diagram. And if you click again, when we made our process map, we were able through that to start to identify in conversation with each other and in observation of our work, those leverage points that exist in our system where we think, boy, I think we should change this part of it. Or for some of you, as we've spoken on the phone, you also talked about developing a process for the first time. So you've identified an entire process as a high leverage moment to act with families. And so that the process map becomes a very powerful tool for finding those levers, finding the drivers that exist in our systems. And when we do the baseline data analysis, again, we're finding those leverage points. So we're looking for the pain points that exist in our system, and we're looking for opportunities where a change might result in improvement. And very similarly, our baseline data analysis, along with our process map to some degree, leads to conversations about what we might do differently. And so in those conversations, we're able then to sort of say, okay, well, instead of the current way that we do this, let's try this other way. And we're able to start to list out the different ideas that we have for making things better for ourselves, for our systems, and for the families that we serve. And so all of that starts to inform the creation of a theory of improvement. And that is depicted on the tool that we call a driver diagram, and that's what's coming up. And so those are all things that we're trying to use and stitch together to have a robust understanding of what's going on. So if we click forward once, where we'll go from here is we'll get to learning session 2, and our focus at that point will be on how we begin to refine our theory of improvement. How do we begin to sort of learn in practice when things are working, when they're not, which ideas are strong, which ones are weak, and continue to get better and better and better. And so we're going to learn some new tools at that stage, some that will help us refine our driver diagram further, others that will be specifically around taking the ideas present on the driver diagram and trying them in practice. And so if we click one slide further, you'll see what that looks like. And I want to see Mr. Potato Head here just as a reminder for the model for improvement, which is that engine for learning and change that we looked at in learning session 1. But this is the model for improvement. So we take the ideas off of our driver diagram, all the good ideas that we have, the ones that have evidence, the ones that don't yet have evidence that they work in practice, and we try them in action. And what we will be learning in the next learning session together and having an opportunity to simulate and experience is that we're going to try things sometimes with one family, sometimes for one day, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a shift. Depending on the nature of the idea, we're going to try it for as short a possible of time as we can that would allow us to learn about its effectiveness in practice. So this is real different from a traditional rollout model where we come up with a good idea and then we figure out how to implement it for everybody going forward. Rather, what we're going to do is small scale experiments where we're going to try something, we're going to have a good idea, but instead of trying it for everybody all the time from now on, we're going to try it for a day, a week, a family, and we're going to collect a little bit of data on how it went, what our experience was, what worked about it, what didn't, what we should change about it, how we might improve it, and then we're going to try again. And there's never going to be any judgment about that. The intention is always just to continuously learn. And as we move through the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, we're going to learn which ideas are functional, which ideas are not, and we will evolve our driver diagram. We will evolve our theory about how to make change successful. We might also discover new leverage points that we didn't see when we looked at our process map, or we didn't see when we did our baseline data. And so we'll pull all that together and we will continue to refine and get stronger and stronger and stronger. And we will stay at that phase for a while. I like what Chris just says in the text box. Fail fast, fail cheap. That is exactly right. Yeah. I had a colleague once who used to say, fail fast to succeed sooner. Fail fast to succeed sooner. These are exactly right things that we're going to try to do. All right. So if we click forward. So just real quick, what I wanted to try out was a little bit of a discussion. So I'm anxious to fail fast and to succeed sooner, and I want to always drive a little bit of discussion on these calls. And I'm interested to hear from all of you. So I know many of you will be sitting together as teams today. Some of you may be calling in on your own. If you're with a team, great. If you're individually, that's okay. But I want you to spend a minute discussing or thinking where your team is regarding your deliverables, your understanding of our collective improvement journey, and any clarifying questions you have about our process. And I'm going to set a little timer on my phone, and when you're ready, if it's before 1 minute, that's great. If it's not, when 1 minute's up, I'll certainly prompt you. But when you're ready, I'd love for you to just dive in and to kind of give us your reflection on this first phase and how it's going.
This is Bob Littman from Freestore. Because we're in a collaboration with Cornerstone and we have a new position at Cornerstone, one of the things we're looking at our process map is really talking through in great detail what our roles are and how that will affect how we work together with the families that we're going to work with.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bob. And so how is that partnership going this week?
The staff person at Cornerstone just started last week, so we're pretty early on in this. We're going to spend a little bit more time, and it's particularly at the initial phase, because as we look at doing the self-sufficiency matrix, one of the things we know is important is to develop relationships with people so that they trust us. But on the other hand, we don't want to be in a situation where we're doing that matrix twice and it's time consuming and kind of detracts from the process.
Brilliant. I think that's great. Sometimes it's important to go a bit slow just to make sure you're getting it right, and it sounds like you're doing that, which is great. Others?
I'll jump in. I think the process kind of seems to change on this journey. I think as we learn new things. So I met yesterday with our coach, and she was able to, I guess, provide some different perspectives on things. And so looking at the process mapping that we had done, and it's almost like, because we're engaging in an entirely new intervention, a new activity, we don't have our baseline data, we don't have anything like that. And so when she was looking at our aim statements that we broke up into 3, it's almost like we could have 3 different process mappings looking at our different aims, because they're entirely different things that we're doing. So it was very helpful, but it was a little overwhelming to think of it, oh, it's actually 3 instead of 1. So I think we continue to learn as we go. And I would say that having the ability to meet with the coach one-on-one was very helpful, and looking at our deliverables, and also kind of looking at them again at 3 different types of deliverables perhaps. So I think I was pretty clear, all of a sudden it seems like I'm not so clear. So that's kind of where we are.
I absolutely love that reflection, and I love that there is an element of discovery present in it, and that is a journey that you feel like is a good one, that you're uncovering things that are important and valuable, and that you're getting the support you need. So I think that's great. I'm so happy to hear that having the coach has been really, really helpful with that.
Kate, this is Maria from Central Clinic, and I met with Kate, and yeah, she was very helpful.
Brilliant. That's great. Maybe a couple more reflections if people are willing.
Hey Brandon, this is Tony. Cincinnati Works. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're a little fuzzy, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay, how about now? Is that a little better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah, actually, I'm finding the process to come together little by little. I was intrigued by what this was going to be about. But, you know, as I was going through actually our baseline data and stuff, one of the few things that I felt were alarming that maybe I don't even want to really address that. But maybe that's what I really need to focus on. So that's something that I'm learning. I think we're in a good place with our deliverables so far. Our aims. Can you still hear me?
Well, you cut out there a bit, Tony. I'm sorry. It sounded like you said you were learning something. I just sort of missed it.
Okay. Can you hold just a second?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Okay, good. Hey, so actually, yeah, I think that I'm learning quite a bit as we go along here. Let me do that. Sorry. I think that as far as our deliverables go, we're in a very good place. I'm looking forward to actually just see the actual results that we have. And today's meeting, thank you, Tamiko. Today's meeting was actually quite good because what I learned about, as I was looking at our baselines, for instance, I was a little concerned with where we were with some of those, and I thought, oh, this isn't good. I don't know that I even want to share that. However, maybe that is what I need to focus on at this point. And a lot of it had to do with actual true self-sufficiency. So, yeah, I feel like we're in a good place. I feel like I'm getting more and more the gist of what we're doing here.
Well, that's so good. Thank you, Tony. And I love that. I love that you're having that experience. I think more than anything, I want this space to be a safe space for learning and progress. I certainly don't want any of the organizations to feel like we have to hide our data or we have to be perfect. I don't think we can be perfect on a learning journey, and we're trying to do something that nobody's ever done before. And so I really think we have to be collaborative and really learn together, and recognize that there's going to be some missteps along the way. There's going to be some discoveries along the way. Sometimes we're going to have some great data, and sometimes we're not. And if we can get to it, where we can do that effectively and help people feel supported, I'll be very happy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. One more. Is anybody else burning to share their reflections?
I'll go ahead. Our meeting with our coach really helped to clarify gaps in our process. And so at this stage, with that clarification, we added a couple more boxes, some what ifs for the process analysis, and it was helpful on having a external individual come in and look at where we were, and now from prior to the coach intervention and now afterwards, we're a lot clearer. A lot of I'd say a lot, but key questions have been kind of answered, and those that have not been answered have been kind of asked. So that puts us in a better place moving forward. So we feel very good about our deliverables. I think one or two steps, and we'll be ready for next phase.
Wonderful. Oh, that's so great. Really, really good to hear. Well, these are wonderful reflections. I'm loath to stop them, but I do know that we have a couple of other things to do, and that Amy has a poll coming up for us, and I think there may be opportunity for continued discussions there. So I want to move us forward a little bit, but just thank you so much. I am just very grateful to hear that teams are benefiting from coaching. That teams are taking advantage and having coaches meet. I'm very grateful that the coaches are available to do that. If your team has not yet had an opportunity to meet with a coach, as we've just heard from at least two of our speakers, that can be a really helpful thing to do. And if you need help connecting, finding a coach, etc., please reach out to Amy, to myself. We to figure that out. So thank you again to everyone who was willing to share this. That's very, very helpful. Amy, will you click us forward one slide? Great. So I guess my next sort of bit of discussion here, just to transition the conversation a little bit, is just to ask about the questions on the arc of development. So are there any clarifying questions that people have around what we're doing in this phase and how it all sort of fits or stitches together, what we've been trying to accomplish, that we can answer today? Broad questions or things that were unclear in the presentation.
Hi, this is Mary from Community Matters.
Yes, hi, Mary.
Hi, my question was about just kind of looking forward and thinking forward on terms of coming to a place where we're identifying, what practices are working best and all of us coming together around those practices. Mm-hmm. When do you foresee, kind of timeline-wise, like when we'll be cross-sharing with other organizations, or when we'll be kind of highlighting what practices are working?
That's an excellent question, Mary. And I'm gonna say three things on that. One is that the first answer, I hope, will be that we are cultivating opportunities for continuous cross-sharing. So what I mean by that is when we have QI content calls, when we have all team calls, I would love for future all team calls to feature teams who want to share something successful that's happening, and for us all to be able to hear from them what they've been doing, and how others might benefit from a visit or learning or a phone call or whatever. So that's something that I want to facilitate. I also think part of that continuous cross learning can be helped facilitated by what our coaches are seeing amongst the teams that they are working with, and what we are seeing at the collaborative level. I do think the second place where we're going to have opportunity for cross-sharing is going to be at the learning sessions, the in-person events. And so what we'd like to do is, as your storyboards, as your sort of charters come together, we want them to be available for folks to look at, for people to see the different process maps and get exposure to all different types of process maps, to get exposure to all the different driver diagrams, to be able to see all the different ideas that are out there. And so we would have an opportunity at the in-person events to both see the work of others and to share our work, and to have opportunity for cross-learning there. And then finally, I think a really critical piece is for us to sort of pick out the ideas that are really strong, where we're seeing good evidence that they are working in practice at the collaborative level, and promote those and sort of say, here's what's working across teams. And then also, I guess one last thing is I want to foster, and I hope we're starting to do this, opportunities for different teams to come together to work collectively, to sort of work in collective action with families. So it might be one family that is struggling with housing, is struggling with a need for a mental health service, is struggling with job security, and 2 or 3 different agencies that each do 1 or 2 of those things very, very well are starting to find their feet together in this collaborative to say, hey, we could complement each other, we could work together, we could develop a shared system for assisting this family to meet each of those needs as they arise and in combination. And so I think those are all the things that we're trying to do.
Yeah, but you can come in. It's not learning.
Are you related to Maribel?
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? I see, is it Vashti? Do you have a question? It looks like I see a question mark in the...
Maybell? Yeah. Okay, I have an Aunt Maribel, and my Maybell was my grandmother. Who's your mom?
No, I didn't have a question. Sorry, I just hit my screen.
That's quite all right. No worries. Any other questions that people might
remember?
Yeah, she always had.
Or is it Joan?
Well, as they arise, please feel free to move them forward and either chat them into the box or certainly speak them out, and we will definitely continue to talk all together. Move forward here, Amy?
Yep, sorry, here I was talking and I was on mute, so. Sorry about that, I forgot I muted myself. So I'll just take over for this sort of sense check to just check in with the teams. We want to get a sense of, how folks are experiencing the work and the improvement process so far. I am going to attempt to do a live poll, so hopefully most people are at a computer and can click on a link. So let's give this a try. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to sort of, I'm going to have to switch screens here real quick. But what we're going to do is do a voting system that will sort of ideally, it's 1 vote per team. So let's see if we can get this new poll up. And we're going to ask 4 questions and give some time. My Google Chrome isn't responding, so give me just a second. Here we go. Oh. Okay, it's working on mine, so just give me a second. I see that you guys can't see it yet. Here we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is try this live poll. So let me, I'm going to post the link in the chat box. And we'll see if we can use it. Otherwise, if you have an issue with the link, if you're unable to do the poll live, you can just go ahead and chat your answer as well. So the first question we're going to get to is asking, like, to date, so we had some pulse checks on where folks were with completing your deliverables, but if you think about the 4 deliverables that we've managed to date, including your aim, your process map, and analyzing your process map, and doing some baseline or outcome measurement analysis, to date, how many of those has your team completed and you feel confident in? So there may be a little bit more than just a draft, but you really feel confident in completing that deliverable. Oh, look, I messed up. I had edited it. So let's do this. Let's just put in the chat box your answer. So either 1, 2, 3, or 4. How many of your deliverables have you completed? There we go. So we have some folks responding online. Perfect. Oh, we even have some people doing sort of half numbers, which is great, but we're seeing a lot of 3s, a couple of 2s. Okay, great. So let's do, so yep, a couple more coming in. So we'll be, too, just for folks to know, at the end of this, we'll be downloading this just to get an idea to see, again, as a collaborative as a whole, where are we at? All right, so here's the second question, is sort of, do you plan, are you confident in that you'll have a drafted key driver diagram? Look, all my questions are messed up. I edited them, and I guess it didn't save. It should be by the 10th, so next Friday. This is what happens when you get a cold. You don't think straight. So yes or no in the chat box. Awesome, seeing a lot of yeses. So just as a reminder too, that, you know, we've talked, and Brandon will touch on this again, but oftentimes a driver diagram will be just initially in a draft. We have a maybe, that's great, and a yes. Okay, awesome. So let me go on and we'll do our second 2 more questions. So we're on question 3. So we want to get an idea of how often you're interacting with your quality improvement coach. So have you been touching base with a quality improvement coach sort of weekly or more often, every other week? You know, maybe to date it's been sporadic. We know that some folks are just now getting reconnected with a coach, or as needed, that's great. Or have you not at all talked to your coach? Yeah, great. So some folks have even added some comments about sort of moving forward. So I saw some comments in the chat box about that maybe it's been just once to date, but going forward they have a rhythm or a standard meeting set. It's really helpful to know. Oftentimes getting in that rhythm is really helpful. Okay, great. So here's our last question for everyone. So overall, like, how are you feeling about the quality improvement process as a team? And give yourself a red, a yellow, or a green as a way to identify how you're feeling as a team about the process overall. Seeing greens and yellows, some more green. Great. So it looks like it slowed down a little bit. Oh, we got a couple more coming in. Great. So a lot of greens and yellows. I don't think I saw red, but we'll go back and double check. But this has really just been helpful for us to get an idea across the board where teams are at and to help us as we're thinking about the collaborative and especially the next learning session, how we can use your input and sort of feedback of where teams are to guide activities moving forward. So thank you so much for your comments. What I'll do too is I'll go ahead and aggregate these and throw them into the slide deck so that when we go to upload it, you can get an idea of where everyone is at. Okay, so I'm going to pause there before passing back to Brandon, just in case anyone had any specific comments about those questions or feedback that you'd like to share. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pass back to Brandon. If folks have any comments that they want to share offline, feel free to call Lucy, myself, or send us an email too. We really want to get everyone's feedback on how you're feeling, and thank you so much for holding tight as my poll didn't work. Lesson learned, test twice, not once. And so I'll just go ahead and pass it back to Brandon to just do a quick refresh on driver diagrams.
Great, thank you, Amy. And a good example of willingness to try something, have it fail, and we're going to learn from it. And I'm sure we'll have more polls in the future, and we'll figure out how to make it work. But brilliant to get all these responses in the chat box. And again, yeah, thank you everyone for being so quick and being able to transition quickly to that. This last little section of our call today is really, I'm going to go quickly through 2 or 3 slides, a refresh on our next deliverable, which is the driver diagram. And for many of you, you'll have been on the call last week, and so this was just a quick refresh. You will have seen a couple of these slides before. For those who weren't on the call last week, this may be just a quick overview, and it may be a good idea to touch base with myself or Amy or your coach on this tool in more detail, and so we'll take a look at that together. So just a reminder of what a driver diagram is. It is a visual tool, and it's a tool that's helpful for organizing all the ideas we have about how to accomplish an aim, a goal, a destination of some sort. And included in the driver diagram is how those ideas work. So that's what is referred to as the drivers. And so those are the key leverage points in the system. They represent the structures, the processes, the norms that are displayed in a system that we feel like, if I could get this process functioning reliably, if I could change the nature of how we communicate with each other, if I had access to another computer, whatever it is, then I would be able to get closer to my outcome. And so it's some combination or mixture of those drivers that's really important for building out our theories. And then we have the change ideas. So what are we going to do differently? What are the actions that we're going to take? Are we going to change the nature of agendas and team meetings? Are we going to purchase that new computer? Are we going to redesign the process with 2 new steps, or rearrange the process, existing steps to get to the reliability that we want to achieve? These are all different ideas that we might have for how to do something on behalf of the families we serve. For many of you, your change ideas are the creation of a process. And so right now, that is a change idea that will need to be tried in practice. You'll design it, and then as you serve a family, you'll see how it works in practice, and you'll learn from it, and then it'll evolve. You'll change the steps as you learn about their utility and how well they work, and then it'll get better. And that's the intention with the driver diagram. So this is just a conceptual overview of what one looks like. If we click forward, Amy, there we go. How we make one is similar to the what we saw earlier. So we first want to gather all kinds of information. We want to gather information on how the system is designed. So we want to have our process maps at the ready, and we want to have some baseline data analysis at the ready for understanding current performance, because those things will inform our understanding of the system. And then we want to gather ideas. And ideas come from lots of different places. Most of the ideas for improvement come from the people who work in the system every day. They've got great ideas about what to do differently with teams, and that's always a real benefit and real positive, and we want to get those down. But there's other places that they can come from as well. So they can come from benchmarking visits, that is going and visiting our peers who are doing similar work. And a big part of this collaborative is about learning from others. It's about having and creating opportunities to visit each other, either virtually or in person, to see how it is that folks do things and where we might get some of those lessons. Sometimes benchmarking means going to other industries. It means going to places that we wouldn't normally associate, say, with the work that we do, maybe going to manufacturing or going to healthcare or going to the education system, and learning from them conceptually about how they solve problems and figuring out how to take those concepts and apply them in the space that we are working in. And then, of course, sometimes it comes from reading different pieces of literature, everything from magazines and newspapers to peer-reviewed journals, where we might glean an idea that's really, really powerful. And once we have these ideas, it's about getting the team together, getting that aim statement down that will bound our theory, that will bound our improvement journey, and then getting the time and space to craft this visual tool. And for me, I think the aim is most important, and then I think it's really critical to give each individual an opportunity to write down what they think the drivers are and what change ideas they have. And to do that first as individuals, and to do that privately, because we all are coming at our systems from different perspectives, and it's a way of avoiding groupthink. It's a way of maximizing access to everyone's perspective. But then it's important to share all those ideas, get them all out on the table, and to work together to develop that visual tool. And some teams really benefit from taking the aim and taking the ideas for what to do differently and putting those on the page first, and then asking themselves the critical question: why am I thinking of this idea? Why am I thinking of doing things in this new way or this different way? And that question can help reveal what the appropriate driver is, what the leverage point is inside the system that you're seeking to change in order to get the different outcome. And so they work to the middle. It's important to recognize that this is a group process, that everyone is coming with experience and knowledge and a slightly different perspective, and so there will be negotiation on what the real leverage points are, which ideas should be included, which ones are likely to be successful. And then also, as we talked about earlier, this is a diagram that will change. It will evolve over time. So it's something that we want to avoid is what I would like to call theory lock, where we get stuck on the first iteration and we think it's perfect. The reality is that our first iteration will be good, but it doesn't yet have all the strong evidence that we would like to have. And so it's likely to change as we gather that evidence in practice. And so we'll want to decide as a group how frequently to go back and re-examine and question and so forth there. So moving forward a slide. We have a resource available, and as Amy said at the start of the call, she will append it to the calendar invite and make it available, I think, probably on the web as well. And it's also freely available on my website. But this is an article called "What's Your Theory?" and it's about driver diagrams and how they're used. And it would be a good reference for teams that are trying to figure out how to build one and what to include in it and so forth there. Great. So just a final reminder from me about our deliverables. At this point, we're sort of clicking right along, and it was great to see where we were at as people sort of addressed all the different things that you've done. But the next version or the next deliverable is our driver diagram due at the end of and we'll look forward to seeing those. It was wonderful to see so many 3s and 4s coming through, lots of teams completing all the deliverables, and I think starting to really get a lot out of those experiences. At least that's my hope. But Amy, back over to you for any sort of final thoughts.
Yeah, I want to bullet point just a few more logistics around just a reminder of where we're going. And I'll come back to this question in just a minute. Maria just posed a question. But regardless of, how complete all of your deliverables are, we will still be asking you to put them into that team charter deck before the learning session. And so we got to get a final date on when we'd like that. But it'll probably be the Friday prior to the learning session. So just wanted to make sure folks are aware of that. The other thing we've had some questions about is if you've tried the self-sufficiency tool and or the budget or spending tool, we'd love to know how that worked out. And although there is a slide in your team charter about how to share your comments for improvement, we'd like to, if we can get that feedback more quickly from you, that'd be really helpful. So you can scan those copies just for us to help see how it was completed. If you do that, just black out the name of the family so you can scan and email them. You can put them in a spreadsheet and email them. It's really up to you. They can be sent directly to me or to the CPC Learning Collaborative email, although I know a couple teams have said they have a hard time sending to that email. And then the other thing, and we mentioned this throughout the call, but if you're having any trouble connecting or contacting your QI coach, or you have any questions about your team's coach, because there have been some changes, feel free to contact myself or Lucy. Lucy's sort of taking the lead on supporting our QI volunteers. So those are just a couple more bullet points. And so real quickly, I want to get to Maria's question. Are we able to use any driver diagram template, or is there a specific one we need to use? So that's a great question. I will say there is a template available in the team charter slide deck that can be downloaded from the CPC Child Poverty Collaborative website. So if you care to use that diagram, it just has some boxes already there. But other than that, you don't have to use, you don't feel forced to use that specific template if you don't want to. Brandon, do you have any comments on sort of formatting?
I would just say that use whatever tool or program is helpful. Some people like to use something like a PowerPoint because it's easy to draw boxes, and then they have it in a format that they can readily display and give to others. Other people might prefer to just draw it on a piece of flip chart paper and take a picture of it. Others might go so far, real sophisticated, to use something like Microsoft Visio, which is purpose-built to to build out things like this. So just whatever makes sense to you all as a team. If it's Post-it notes and flip chart paper, fantastic. If it's PowerPoint, fantastic. If it's Excel, fantastic. Just whatever you can do.
Okay, great. Let me look at these other questions. Good point, Bob. Great point. Bob was looking at the calendar and noticed that it is Friday after Thanksgiving, so we probably will not make that the due date since folks will likely be with family and off. So possibly we'll ask for it maybe the Monday, no later than the Monday before. Oh, great question. So again, back to driver diagrams. Margaret had a question around the template has, one template has primary and second drivers, while a second template only has a category for key drivers. So Brandon, comments on the specific nature of drivers?
Sure. A lot of driver diagrams do have both primary and secondary drivers, and the way that I like to explain that is to say that the primary drivers, the ones that are closest to the aim statement, they usually represent the what needs to change in the system. So they're sort of the big buckets. The secondary drivers are what I like to think of as the where in the system that the change is needed, or the actionable moment in time. So for example, you might have a primary driver, which is our identification process. And in the secondary driver position, you might say, well, it's steps 2, 3, and 5 in our identification process that need to change. And then of course, next to them, here's our ideas of how to change steps 2, 3, and 5. We're gonna eliminate step 2, we're gonna use a different tool at step 3, and we're gonna have a conversation protocol available for our staff at step 5, or whatever it is. And so that's sort of the what and the where and the how might be the primary, secondary, and change ideas. And that, if that's helpful, then great. Sometimes people can do the what and the where in a single driver. But for most of our systems, which are more complex, having the availability of the secondary drivers opens up the complexity of the system and allows us to get much more specific about where we're choosing to take action in the system.
Great. So if it's helpful, we can go back. I can go back and ensure that we have a couple boxes for folks to work off of for secondary drivers too. But then we'll just have to re-upload that template. So it might be another day before you see that version of the slide. So I want to be cognizant of time. We're right at 11 o'clock, and thank you everyone for joining us. If you do have any additional questions, again, feel free to email myself, Lucy, or Brandon, and we'll make sure to get back with you. Again, this was recorded, so we'll provide a link to the recording on the PowerPoint once I update the slide deck with some of our results from the polling, but you'll be able to find a direct copy of the webinar on Child Poverty Collaborative's YouTube channel too. So that'll be up before the end of today. So thank you again. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and hope you have a great day.
Stay well, everybody. Thanks again.